Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. I'm Stacy Walker. I'm the Education and Program Coordinator at New Canaan Cares. And how fitting that a winter storm occurred just in time for our program today with Dr. Amanda Craig, Winter Isolation Survival Tips for Our Young Children. Today, we will explore free play options to build confidence, resilience, and socialization skills to stay connected with others. You will leave armed with activities your child can enjoy with family, or how to support your child's social and emotional development. A little bit about Dr. Craig. Dr. Amanda Craig is a licensed marriage and family therapist that specializes in working with families. She often says she usually has more than one person in her therapy room. Dr. Craig uses a strength-based approach to therapy, drawing heavily from emotionally focused therapy, EFT, which helps clients to gain awareness of their emotions, isolating their origins, and learning how to regulate that. Her specialties include treatment of relationship issues such as communication, conflict resolution, infidelity, and parenting, as well as individual depression, anxiety, addiction, and life-work harmony. She's a practice in New York City and in Darien, Connecticut. So we welcome her today. And before we get started, just a little housekeeping. We will be recording this. And throughout the program, if you have questions, please feel free to unmute yourself or put them in the chat and send them to me, and I will read them to Amanda. Thank you again for joining us, and welcome, Amanda.
Hello, thank you for coming. Chrissy, I see your backdrop of a fireplace, and it's so warm and cozy. So I'm gonna use that as like my comforting symbol while we go through this. I also noticed it just started snowing. That's hysterical. I'm born and raised in Minnesota. So for the last 3 days, I've been in all my glory. So it's exciting that I get to look out my window right now and see it snow. As Stacy said, feel free to ask questions along the way. I think sometimes discussions make these talks more rich. So I'm happy to answer questions along the way. I'm going to share my screen. Oops, I put it up early. I thought it would stay. Here we go. Okay. So I'm going to focus this morning on kind of the preschool, early elementary, that 3 to 7 age range, 3 to 8. And I say this because I want us to keep in mind, fascinating. Did you know 90% of brain growth happens before kindergarten? And so we're talking about kids who have over 100 billion brain cells focusing on language, numbers, memory, attention, large muscle. So what that tells us is there are tons of synapses or pathways in the brain. And actually, this age group is kind of one of the peak levels of messaging or these pathways. And you'll hear me talk about these kind of neural networks throughout the talk, because that's where a lot of messaging happens. That's where all of our messaging happens. And what we want to do with fun and with our activities with our kids is create healthy brain patterns or healthy pathways. So that's why I put this in here. But what's fun about this age is they're becoming their own little people. They're having more independence. They're showing more affection on their own. So for the first handful of years, we're telling them how much we love them and we're holding and cuddling them. This is the age where you start to hear I love you from them, unsolicited, or they might come in and hug or cuddle, which is just so fun to see that change. And they're also starting to recall things, time, and places. And their timing may not be correct, but they're starting to really think about things that happened last week or things that happened on Wednesdays. And so that opens up all of these new brain pathways, if you will, open up all these new opportunities for us to connect with our kids, but also give them kind of a rich experience in this developmental stage. And because they're becoming more independent, they're really looking for parents to provide some safety and security so they can go out and play in the world, and then they come back and know that we're there. What makes that really, really challenging now is we're actually in a crisis. This pandemic is really by definition a crisis, which is amazing because you think of a crisis, you might think of a big event that happens once. We've been in it now for almost a full year and it's not over yet. And so what a crisis is, an intense, difficult, troubling, dangerous time, an event that leads to unstable circumstances. Absolutely. It's a turning point for better or worse, and the future will be impacted. So likely it won't go back to what it was. And this creates an instability not only for us as parents, but also our kids. Because neither our kids nor us know how long it's going to last and how impactful it's going to be. What are the long-term ramifications? What are the ramifications for summer? What are the ramifications for spring break? There's so many unknown qualities. And what happens, this is the Neuro Networks I was talking about earlier. These things that we're experiencing now every day. And hold on a second, because before we even had this pandemic, we had work stress, we had home stress, we had scheduling, we had activities, we had academics, we had all these stressors to begin with. And now we've put on this pandemic, which is kind of shaking it all up. So there's the usual stressors, and then there's now these new stressors. And in either case, what happens is we get an environmental trigger. It hits our, these are our brain cells, and it sends messages from one brain cell to the other. An environmental trigger early on in the pandemic for our kids could be going to the store and seeing everybody in masks. For a second, our kids and even ourselves kind of tense. It could be going to school and the teacher says, nope, can't hold hands. Girls don't touch each other. Right there, there's this kind of surprise element. There's a nervousness that comes upon us, right? Parents are looking at Christmas break or winter break or spring break or ski season and knowing the usual things that we do, we can't plan. There's those moments where we feel the tense. There's a threat to our safety, and our nervous system feels that. That's where you might feel your heart racing or your palms get sweaty, your blood pressure starts to change, you might have racing thoughts. What's happening is the cells take in these messages and send messages throughout your nervous system. And that's why your heart, your breathing, your digestion, people talk about, I can't eat, or I'm emotionally eating, or my stomach has a knot, or I'm constipated. All of that is related to stress, because these things are going on that we're not really sure how long it will last or how bad it'll get. So some of the common things we're seeing in adults, overly distracted or low patience, overdoing it. So it could be, in a lot of times, one of the ways we deal with stress is to avoid the stress. And to avoid the stress, I'll overwork, or I'll get really busy into something. And that way I'm really focused on the something and I don't worry about the stress. Racing thoughts is a huge one. What's going to happen? How should I do this? How am I going to get the kids ready? How am I going to, I got to put these pieces. Oh, but then there's these added things. You know, going to Vermont skiing, it used to be you had enough to think about, packing everybody's stuff, getting the hotel, getting the lift tickets, getting the ski class. Well, now on top of it, what's the protocol? Do I have to get things? Do I have to sign up beforehand? Can you bring food into the lot, right? So it's all these things. Our thoughts are starting to work faster at a mile a minute. And with that, we get keyed up. And when we get keyed up and all that energy flow, eventually we get super tired and then we crash, but then we can't sleep. So it's this, and then tomorrow comes another environmental trigger. So you may find yourself easily agitated, or a sense of being detached or numb or blah, right? It's kind of like shutting down almost, because it's so hard and pressureful to have all these environmental triggers being processed on a regular basis. We might have trouble emotionally regulating. And then it starts to impact our relationships, because while we're going through this, so are our partners and so are our kids. And I'll talk in a minute about some of the stress actions we're seeing in our kids. Do you relate to these? Are you experiencing some of these? Some people will say they experienced more at the beginning of COVID. Some are saying they're actually experiencing more now. So for some people, they kind of hunkered down and were like, okay, I got this. And they burned out. Others kind of got really scared at the beginning and then burned out. And now they're feeling a little more calm. So I kind of hear both sides. Are people recognizing some of these? Anybody? That's okay. Just want to see if we're relating or if we're on the same page here. So some of the stressors we're seeing in our kids. You may find new behaviors or a regressed behavior, more napping. I put bedwetting or wetting, or even wetting in underwear when they haven't. As they get into like kindergarten, first, second, might be more clingy or needy behavior, looking for more cuddling. It could be food or sleeping habits changing. A huge one as you get into elementary school are complaining of aches. I have a stomach ache, I have a headache, I don't feel good. A lot of times this age group can't communicate their emotions very well, definitely fear or scared. So they can communicate, and it manifests through like stomach ache and headaches are the biggest ones. Or I don't feel good, but you can't really find an origin of it. Nightmares and talking incessantly. So these are the kids who, some will internalize it and they're almost quieter or seem a little more withdrawn. Other kids will talk more, and maybe they're telling stories, maybe they're skipping from topic to topic, but there's kind of this incessant talking that doesn't seem to be, it seems more of a monologue than a dialogue. I think of it as kind of an anxious chatter. Are people seeing these in their kids, or are there others that they're seeing and wondering if it's related? Okay. So what I wanted to do is offer some suggestions on things to do, and then also some ways to frame this time and how we all comfort our nervous system. Because again, I go back to those cells sending all these messages throughout our body that we're kind of in crisis mode. There's a panic going on. And how do we calm down and know that we don't know how long this will go on? We don't know how bad it'll get or what it'll mean for the future. But right here, right now, we are safe. And we are in relationships that are important to us, and we do want to enjoy each other, be in joy together. And so here are some thoughts. Keep having to shift my people. Okay. So the outside play. All of these things will go back to how it calms the nervous system. Right? So there's very practical components to it. And the nice thing about being outside is we get fresh air. When we breathe in the air, we tend to take deeper breaths. Breathing in that chilly air actually gets oxygen moving through our bloodstream, and it wakes our body up. So getting outside is really helpful to our physical being, and also then to our emotional being. So when we go outside, it is nice if we go out with the kids. Pros and cons to that, I get that. But it is nice, especially when we're looking at the older preschool or the younger elementary school. They really want us to be out there with them to play. And some of the tips of let them lead. So typically parents are used to kind of guiding the structure of the day or guiding the play. And this is a great opportunity to let them meander and kind of follow their lead. What is it they want to do? Do they want to make boot trails? Do they want to make snowmen? Do they chit chat? Right? Some kids, when they have that unstructured time, they'll start asking questions or they'll start sharing their experience. So letting them kind of lead or meander with them, slowing down and not rushing. That's one of the beautiful things a lot of people are talking about is more work from home and less structured kid activities has given us the opportunity to move a little slower and have a little less on our plate. And so we can take that opportunity and just slow down a little bit and maybe ask them questions too around what they're noticing, giving them some language. How was today at school? Are kids wearing masks? What's it like to see kids in masks? Do you have kids still on Zoom? My 4-year-old has a girl or a boy, I'm not sure which, who is still on Zoom. So everybody's in the classroom but the one kid. And so when we started talking about it, she asked, like, will she be coming back? Does she have coronavirus? Is that why she's not coming to school? Right? So we can get some really interesting information and have some conversations that'll help calm them by just allowing for some of this meandering and kid-led play. So for the younger ones, keeping it simple, finding colors, numbers, shapes outside. They can help shovel and make tunnels, especially with the snow we've got. And this is really exciting. On the East Coast, we don't get typically this much snow. And so to be able to make some tunnels or make some snow forts, rock and stick hunting. You know, kids will start talking and just kind of free associate or think out loud when they're doing something else. So a great way to get them kind of talking while you're looking for sticks or looking for rocks. And then the snow trails. Inside play. This is a great age, especially the younger preschool, to give them tasks and chores. Absolutely. They are all able to take on chores, whether the little ones, it's making their bed or putting their clothes in the right laundry basket, to the older kids who are unloading a dishwasher or putting towels in the linen closet, helping sweep the floor. Giving them some chores or tasks does two things. One, it gives them a purpose or a responsibility in the family. And they're still at the age where that's pretty cool. Once they get into the tween years, that's not so cool. They've got other things they want to do. But usually this young elementary is still excited about being given a chore. It's like they're given some responsibility. It very much speaks to this developmental stage. Some of the things I like to do as families is highlight the day. How was today, guys? Win, lose, or draw? And how come? Or what was your favorite part of the day? You know, great conversations over dinner that are a little more structured or guided, but also start some conversation around what their day was like or what they're experienced. Family rituals. Because there's so much uncertainty going on, this is a great time to offer some structure through rituals. Maybe you're lucky enough where with everybody working from home, you now get to have breakfast together. Or maybe everybody comes to the dinner table for in the evening. I'm a huge fan of the dinner table. I think we've gotten away from it, but with open floor plans and the island, we've gotten away from sitting at a table and having meals together. And so I love that. And I love the opportunity to ask about their day, share about our day, being transparent or sharing our wins and loss for the day is a way to model for them emotional awareness and regulation. So by me saying, today was a tough day. I got stuck in the snow, right? My office was really cold. I don't think the heater's working, right? That tells them I'm a human that had some hard go of the day. How was your day, right? It opens up that it's okay if they were struggling with something too. And then the other way to provide some structure is outline the day, right? Or the week, giving them some kind of staples that they can look forward to or that they know will happen helps ground their nervous system. You know, it brings something predictable in a very unpredictable time. So those rocks and sticks, you can bring those in. It's amazing when you let kids play where they'll go with that kind of stuff. Here's a glue gun. Let me help you with it. Let's glue these rocks and sticks together. Let's paint these rocks and sticks. Let's pick a puzzle. Puzzles are great because we can start them. We can come back to them. They can do it independently. We can do it together. So we can stop and start. Doesn't have to be all in one setting. So maybe part of a family ritual is after school, when they get home, we spend 15 minutes on the puzzle while they have a snack and we talk about our day. Baking and cooking. This is a great one for this age because they are able to help measure, help pour, help stir, right? Pour batter in a pan. All these things that normally we have them watch us do, they can actually take on and start doing. And again, this makes them feel confident. It builds their security in self and that they can do things. And it really speaks to the part of them that wants to be more independent. The other thing this age is great at is story creations, whether it's in person, like dress up and producing a play, if you will, or if it's short story writing or pictures, writing picture stories. All of those are a way for the kids to use their creativity, but also for us to watch what kind of storylines they give. That can tell us a lot about how they're feeling or what their experiences are. And we're finding with the TikToks of the older kids and YouTube, kids are noticing videos are a thing and they're more apt to understand that concept than my generation or even 10 years ago. So you can use that, and that's just a fun kind of family keepsake to have ongoing. Thoughts on, are people doing these things? Are there other things that are coming to mind?
If you don't feel comfortable unmuting, you can always put it in the chat. I'm sure Amanda would love some feedback.
The other thing that works really well for this age group, because they tend to be more open than our tweens and teens, is the pay it forward or the gratitude. So a pen pal neighbor. Maybe you don't even know the neighbor next door. You've never really gotten to know them. Maybe they're an older person. Maybe you're new to the neighborhood. Maybe they're new to the neighborhood. But having kids draw cards or bake cookies or even doing coloring sheets or making their own, these storybooks they're making, excuse me, and then offering it to a neighbor, excuse me. Or, excuse me, or sending them to a grandparent, or sending them to a classmate. last year when we got out of school in March, that felt very abrupt for my preschooler. And she had a friend.
It's 10 o'clock.
That ended up moving to a different district. And so she missed her. She missed her so. So we sent pictures after about 6 months. And at that age, there's a lot of growth. They could actually see each other grew. And then they sent some letters back and forth. And it was just a way for her to get some closure on that friendship. And also to see that the friend was still alive and well. Something bad didn't happen to her, but that she moved. And so it gave some closure to that experience of losing her friend that felt very abrupt for her. And then the other thing that's great at this age, because they do shift a bit from preschool to elementary in the toys they're playing with. Earlier, I talked about going outside and, finding colors and numbers. That's a very preschool thing. If you go try to do that with your second grader, they're probably going to look at you like, what? I'm not looking for colors. They've advanced. So it might be a good time to clean out some toys and have them help with that process and talk about how these will go to a younger kid that doesn't have these toys or would like to play with these toys. And why these things work, right? Whether it's the outside play, the inside play, or the gratitude exercises, is it resets the nervous system to feel safe. While these environmental triggers around the pandemic and the unknowns make the nervous system anxious and feel unsafe or a sense of danger, having these structures or these elements of joy in life or these family connections bring the nervous system to a safety or a calm place. And what that does is calms the blood pressure, lowers the heart rate. The brain isn't racing, it's more able to focus or concentrate. There's less of that anxious chatter or anxious energy. And for parents, when we play with kids, when we have fun, when we slow down and drop into those moments with them, we can actually release oxytocin or serotonin, which are the calming and bonding chemicals in our body, which makes us feel better too. So discipline's a tough one because when parents are feeling the anxiety or the stress, it's harder for us to parent. Like it just is, because we're in a state of dysregulation or uncertainty. So I loved these pictures. I tend to be the far right when I'm dysregulated, where I will yell. The one and I hear that one probably the most, but the other one that'll often happen in parenting is the one next to it, which is we're not sure what to do, or we're just so over it that we disengage, right? And there's time and place for disengage, and there's time and place for changing our tone of voice and talking louder. But when those are our only go-tos, that's going to feel hard for us. We're going to feel guilty afterwards, and our kids are going to feel sad. And these are more often the directions we go when we're feeling under more pressure and stress. So where we want to go is leaning into misbehavior. What do I mean by that? This is kind of the first picture, right? Our kids aren't trying to be jerks. They are not doing this to us. They're struggling with something, and they're so young, they often don't have the language yet to communicate what they're feeling or what their experience is. So we want to get curious with them about what is going on. When they're cranky or needy, are they tired or hungry? Those are our quick, easy go-tos. Might something have happened at school today? Might they have had one of those environmental triggers that was uncomfortable? My preschooler came home one day and said, we were talking about hugs. And she said, but I can't hug my friend and I can't hug my teacher. And I said, oh, you can't? How come? And she said, because they might have coronavirus. So she's learning that at school. She was able to communicate that in that moment. But in the other moments, she yelled and cried and demanded she was not going to do that, whatever that is. And so it would be really easy for me to yell at the behaviors, the demanding behaviors and the crying, and not lean in or explore or get curious about what might be going on underneath the crying and the neediness and the demanding behavior. So you'll notice in that example, I'm not going into, how was your day? Did something happen today? When she's in the middle of demanding, but I'm more making the connection, oh, this is interesting. This is a behavior that's new or not typical, or often means she's struggling. She's not hungry. She's probably tired. Okay, how do I comfort that? So I'm really focusing on her or him as a bigger person and not just the bad behavior. The demanding behavior is what makes me want to do the fourth woman of yelling at my kid. When I stop and I kind of lean into what's going on, I can imagine what it's like. And when I imagine what their experience is, it's actually going to produce more empathy in me than anger, if that makes sense. So when we think about, and this is a good partner tip too, when we think about what is it going on for you? What must be going on? You seem agitated. I can't believe you just talked to me that way. We tend to parent that behavior and not necessarily, or our partner get mad about that behavior versus looking under at what really might be going on here. Because that's an out of character behavior. So we're looking at that, trying to name the feeling with kids, especially the younger ones, helping them scale it. Oh my goodness, that was a big situation. Oh, that must have, that you're having a big feeling, or you're having a little feeling. As they get older, we may go into the more 1 to 10 scaling emotion. But in these early elementary years, even just recognizing a big emotion from a little emotion and seeing if they can generally tie it to a tough day or being tired can help them learn some emotional regulation and self-awareness. And because they're not great at communicating yet, we can offer them some multiple choice. When a kid is in the middle of a tantrum, it's more about the first picture on this slide, which is comforting and soothing. For some kids, they need a hug. And this can be really hard if you feel like the last parent because you want to yell and scream, but you see they need a hug. So some kids need a hug, and then we can go into this multiple choice. For other kids, they need a moment on their own. They want to go in their room. They want to go. That's okay. Let them go. And when we come back regulated, we can ask, wow, that was a big emotion, or there seemed to be some emotion there. Do you know what it was about? Did something happen in school today? Did you get to see your friend Julia today? I know you had math today. Was that a tough day? So you're kind of giving them some language for them to pick from. And that helps them start to make links between, I have a feeling, it's a big or little, and it is about this thing. I'm hungry. Could be very, very simple. I'm hungry. Let's sit down and have a snack. And that opens an opportunity for some of the discussion. And then at this early age, because all of these things are new, helping them by reassuring, oh, that makes a ton of sense. Oh, I'm so glad you shared that with me. Oh, that does sound confusing. No wonder you're, I don't know if I'd say needy or clingy, but no wonder you're feeling down. allowing them the opportunity to be heard and understood and be told it's okay helps them develop a sense of self-security, right? We all have sad feelings. We all get angry. It's what we do with that is important for ourselves and the relationships around us. So if we can start encouraging kids at this age to understand and know that it's okay to be angry, they won't feel so ashamed of being angry, but feel it's okay, and then focus more on what we do with that as they get older. Is this making sense?
Yes.
Thank you. Somebody is there.
I know. I'm so happy someone answered. It makes sense to me, Amanda, even though I have older kids.
So, whoops. Whoops. This last piece, and this is really important because we talk a lot about how do we do for our kids, how do we create experiences for our kids to grow, how do we teach our kids, we want our kids to be happy, we want our kids to grow into well-adjusted adults, and our focus becomes so much on our kids and our families and what needs to happen, we forget about the most important component. And why I say that's the most important part is if we don't have our oxygen mask on, right? The basics of the airplane. If we don't have our oxygen mask on, there's no oxygen coming from us. We cannot be good caregivers. And so it is so important for us to have self-care and to have time because again, our kids aren't the only one going through this pandemic and having big life stressors outside the pandemic. And so it is so important for us adults to check in and do our own body scans for aches and pains and name our own emotions. What are your go-tos? Do you find yourself more in the anxiety camp where you have racing thoughts and jittery, feeling jittery and keyed up and more energy, worrying about what's coming? Or do you find yourself in a more exhausted state where it's hard to get going and maybe you're not racing thoughts at all? And that's kind of more of the depressive quality. And often the depressive quality comes with thoughts about this is hard or I didn't do that well. So depression often comes with more now past thoughts, whereas anxiety often comes with worries for the future. So that kind of helps tease some of that out. Because when you talk about eating, sleeping, both of those are impacted by anxiety and depression. So just having a sense of how do you cope with stress? Do you bury it and keep moving? Because it's probably coming out in some way. Do you drink every night? Last I read that alcohol rates of buying alcohol are up 300%. So somebody's using that coping skill, right? Sounds like a lot of us. Are we arguing and fighting? Are we putting our head down and like getting through it? All those are so important for us to assess, like what's working well, what makes us feel whole and giving us energy and calming our nervous system, and which ones are actually creating more toxicity. When you think about alcohol, alcohol is a depressant. So if you're already feeling a little depressed and now you're drinking every day on top of it, odds are you're going to feel more depressed. Or if you have an anxious quality going on and you're drinking, probably the next day you're going to have more of an anxious quality because of the substance on the nervous system. So we want to just be aware of how are we doing emotionally? Where in our body are we holding our stress? And then what are we doing with it, right? Are you stretching or meditating, journaling, scripture? All of those are ways that we can process or purge our stress, our worries. Obviously, and they say this, right? It's such like the pat answer. You got to get enough sleep. You got to eat superfoods. You got to reduce the alcohol, drink a lot of water. Stress is actually dehydrating. When you're constantly in stress and worry, it dehydrates your body. So although those things are so obvious, it actually is so impactful when you are stretching or walking each day. Again, if you're outside taking in this cool air, it's going to make a huge difference. A little can go a long way with these. And then also I have on here, know your soil issues. So this is that idea of if we've experienced trauma in our past, or we're in a tough marriage even before the pandemic, these things will be exacerbated here and now. And so although I might feel agitated because my kid's always complaining, that's probably true. But if my marriage was in a really tough place beforehand, or my parents couldn't cope with stress and anxiety and drank a lot, those pieces of my inner child are probably going to come into my here and now experiences. Does that make sense? That's like, could be a whole talk of itself. But the reason I bring it up is it's so important that we recognize and are patient and gentle with ourselves that this is tough. And then we're a human experience with a lot of lifetime. So those things that have happened to us in the past will help influence how we cope today. And so being aware of, this is interesting, my parent was a drinker and I'm leaning towards drinking to cope with this. Oh, interesting. Or, you know, my dad was never around. He worked a lot and I can feel myself pulling into work as a way to not have to deal because I'm not sure what to do with all this stress. So we can start making links between past and present, healthy ones too, such as my mom, you know, exercised, was home with us and had a part-time job that she loved. I remember her feeling light and airy and having good life balance. Oh, interesting. I'm linking that to my lifestyle now. Do I see that in what I'm doing? So it's part of our recognition of self is looking at us as a whole person, not just today. With that spirit, when we're in love or in partnership and closeness, we feel better. Our nervous system is calm and our body actually responds better to environmental stressors and triggers. So making time for relationships of joy, relationships of intimacy. Doesn't have to be an hour, doesn't have to be a 3-hour date night. It can be a 10-minute coffee. It can be a 10-minute afternoon tea. It could be a 10-minute in bed listening to a song together. Like it can be shorter glimpses, but if we can have moments, it doesn't even have to be 10 minutes. If we even have a moment of laughter, if we can look across the room at our partner while our kids are going crazy and both look at each other like, oh my gosh, I think they're going to eat us up. And we're both like, yeah, I hear you, right? We're in it together. Right there in that moment, you can calm the nervous system, and actually that noise of chaos can quiet because your heart is being attuned with a loved one. And then with that, we're looking at what is our needs, our desires. Do we need to find time for something? Do we have to let go of something? Do we have to forgive ourselves or somebody else? Hanging on to resentment is really heavy. And if we're hanging on to resentment and going through a pandemic and trying to parent our kids, that's a heavy load to carry. Are there risks we need to take? Are there fears we have that are holding us back that we need to fight through? Do we need to slow down? So again, this is part of that internal scan of what's kind of the nudge I'm hearing that I need for myself to feel good or to feel better. We covered a ton. Do we have some questions? Was this interesting? Did you know it all already?
Well, I have to say we did cover a lot, and what I appreciate is learning about our children and also learning how to take care of ourselves as parents and how that helps us be better parents. So I did find it interesting, and I hope to share it with my friends with younger children.